Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Lee Cantor here with Stone Payton, another episode of Atlanta Business Radio, and these are my favorite. These are the ATDC radio shows that we do here in Midtown at ATDC HQ.
Well, this whole line of business of interviewing business people beats the heck out of working, but my favorite part of it is coming down and doing these on-site broadcasts. This is going to be a lot of fun. We've got a studio full. We've got a day full of broadcasting that we're going to be doing here from ATDC. First up on our episode 1 today, please join me in welcoming to the broadcast co-founder and COO with Sorter.ai, Mr. Will Allred. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Well, before we get too far into things, tell us about Sorter. How are you serving folks?
Yeah. So Sorter, the main idea is we're building a neuromarketing platform for digital teams. Historically, neuromarketing has been the use of EEGs, fMRIs to understand brain activity for the purpose of marketers. When
you say historically, how historic are we going back?
Early 2000s.
Early 2000s is the beginning of the history of the neuromarketing?
Neuromarketing was actually born here in Atlanta with the neuroscience department at Emory.
And then what did it entail back then?
Yeah, so back then it was a case study looking at Coca-Cola versus Pepsi and a blind taste test. So they had people within an fMRI machine drink both beverages without the logo and then with the logo. And what you saw was, this is an unpopular thing to hear in Atlanta, that people actually preferred the Pepsi.
Right.
And then when you put that red logo in front of people's faces, the brain activity actually flipped. And you saw the power of the brand in that exact moment.
And then they preferred Coke when they saw red.
Exactly. When they saw the cursive writing, the red logo, they loved Coca-Cola again.
Even though that when it was...
Nothing changed other than the logo.
Now, when I was going to school, there was a story, I don't know if it was true, that with a blind taste test, people couldn't tell the difference between like Coke and Sprite. Like dramatically, the beverages they couldn't discern.
No, and that's the byproduct of great packaging, great branding, and great marketers.
That's true. That wasn't just a urban legend.
I would not be surprised. So that kind of testing works really well for a one-to-many experiment. Think like a Super Bowl campaign. You'll see a lot of, or at least I do just because I swim in these circles, a lot of testing done around Super Bowl ads where they'll have people strapped into an EEG and they look to see indicators of engagement levels within something like a really expensive TV spot. That's great, but it doesn't scale out for a digital marketer where you've got multiple iterations of any sort of experience, email. You think about the amount of segmentations that go into an email campaign. The ability to tailor that into how someone's thinking is it can't be done through an EEG. I can't afford to put an EEG on everyone within my marketing list. So what we're doing is we're using personality science to scale up that ability to understand how someone thinks. We view personality as patterns in how someone thinks and behaves. And by using personality science, we can segment a list by our expected understanding of how someone's going to think through a buying decision. And then we can recommend marketing actions for things like email campaigns in a way that scales, in a way that's psychologically resonant.
So now, is there a correlation between, you did the blind taste test and they said, I like this over that, but that wouldn't impact the buying decision, even though your data would say, oh, they like the flavor of Pepsi better. When it came down to buying it, they were buying Coke.
Right, and the way we're scaling neuromarketing is a little different. So we're looking at it from the subject matter, the coloring of imagery. Are you going to use a more active call to action button versus a more passive call to action button? Is it learn more or is it try now? Is the language that you're using, is it more long form? Is it a little more long? But
does that data change? Say you say which one works better, you probably know. Is it learn more or try now?
It depends on who you're talking to, right?
So does it depend? So there's not a universal, okay, do this and you'll be right 70% of the time?
Exactly. And this is it's the holy grail for marketers, right? It's to know how someone's going to think about what it is that they're receiving. We put rapid iterations out into the market all the time, and we try to optimize based on behaviors. But we don't necessarily have a data-backed reasoning for why we're putting it out the way we're putting it out. And what we're offering to marketers right now with our audience analytics tool is an ability to understand this group in your audience is going to respond better with cooler hues, more natural imagery, use more passive language, even though it might not be as grammatically desirable. It's going to create a more delightful experience for that individual.
And then you can see that ultimately they're buying more.
Right. It's not necessarily just about the conversions. We view the conversions as a byproduct. It's about creating a better experience with that brand, which in turn will create a longer lifetime value of that customer.
So that's the thesis. Has that been proven?
So we've run some early experiments. It's a little too early to jump into necessarily scientific backed results, but what we're looking at right now in our early taste tests, our early studies is a 40% lift.
Mm-hmm. And then, so like, what type of companies does this work best for?
So,
like e-commerce.
That's actually exactly where we're targeting, e-commerce.
And then, so you have some betas out there now? Like, what stage are you at?
Yeah, so right now we're enrolling companies to join in our pilots. So we've got a pretty dense pipeline right now of companies that are excited about this. And
sure, because everybody's looking for any edge.
You are speaking exactly out of our sales playbook, which is you are looking for an edge and you're trying to understand your audience, right? And so this resonates when we go talk to people. So it's been exciting. Right now it's about sitting down with the marketing teams and getting those things into action.
Now, what about for your own work? Like on your website, when you're recruiting new people, are you implementing all your, are you eating your own cooking?
Yeah. So it's funny you say that. We were actually just talking about that this morning. How can we be better about more static landing pages and things, more static web presences where we don't necessarily in that moment know the psychology of the user? How do we speak to all types of decision makers? Are these people action oriented? Are these people process oriented?
Well, don't you have to have different landing pages for each of those personas?
Ideally, right? And so that's something that we're working on internally.
So now you landed on this kind of...
I will say you will notice on our site we use highly saturated blues, so cooler hued colors. There's a psychological reason for why we do that.
That wasn't an accident.
That's not an accident.
So now making predictions based on personality, how did you come up with that plan?
So it actually, my co-founder was working on another business at the time, and he was looking at his customer profile. He was talking to people who fit the same demographics, the same size, look of a school, but he would hear different things from them. He would hear, I want to be the first person to use this versus who's used this before. It's the classic trying to go to market dilemma of how do I find this person who's going to be open to my new product?
Well, the early adopter is a smaller percentage, but they are the ones that will take more risk and try new things.
Right. And there's actually a personality trait known as openness that we can measure for and we can use within our segmentation models. So, I know if I'm sending advertisements to someone, if they score higher for openness, if they score higher for extroversion, and they score lower for neuroticism, they're much more likely to be open to my new communication than someone who would score the opposite in those categories.
So now what clues are you using that they have those personalities?
Are you asking how do we process an individual?
Right.
Well, I mean, the simple answer, it's math.
But there are certain behavioral traits, or there are certain activities they're doing, or certain clues you're using to discern.
Right. I think the easiest way to describe it is, we're using biographical.
So you go to their LinkedIn?
Demographic information is a part of that. We're looking at social information, and we're looking at demographics. So those are all interesting things to us. And the simplest way I've found to describe it is think about the things that you're interested in. If we can have an understanding of what you're interested in, we can start to get a clue at who you are as a person.
Mm-hmm. So now, for you, when you go to market, like, okay, so I sign up for this thing. What happens now? So you have to kind of at some point analyze my audience or who I think my audience is?
Yep, that's step one of our onboarding process is to upload your customer list and then...
So you start with my existing customers.
Exactly.
So now in your case, if you were to do this for yourself, you don't have a lot of existing customers. How would you do a startup that don't really have a clear vision of who their customers yet?
Yes, and this is a bit into product development, trying to eat our own dog food, right? So we're looking at it from how do we use the same learnings from how we process an individual customer list to go out into market and find new customers.
Right.
So you can extrapolate how that would work, but it's essentially we're looking at the things that we know will attract the right people, and that's experimental marketers who want to do something new and gain that edge.
So now, for you, how much of your work are you partnering with universities and studies and getting kind of smart people involved in this too, or you got enough smart people?
Yeah, I'm no neuroscientist, right? And so we recognized that very early on. And so something we were very adamant about was creating really strong ties with the academic community. Now, nothing's set in stone yet, so I can't talk into any specifics, but we view this as a cornerstone for our brand. There's plenty of marketers selling other marketing things to other marketers.
Right, but you're the neuro marketing folks.
We're trying to serve as the bridge between the scientific community.
Right.
We got our inspiration from what they were doing.
Right.
And so we want to help continue to foster their work. And then we also want to help serve as a bridge between them and the scientific community so that marketers can use science and not necessarily...
Now, how do the neuroscientists feel about this? Is this the dark side to them to help people sell more stuff, or do they want to do more kind of philosophically large missions and monuments? Or is that what they're trying to build?
It depends on who you're talking to, right? But I think ethics are definitely a core piece of the conversation. I'm certainly not blind to that.
And that's part of your profile, right? You got to find the neuro science folks that are okay with capitalism selling stuff.
Yeah, and I haven't found any neuroscientists who are like, this is dark and scary, right? If you think about the nature of what marketing is, you're trying to influence behavior.
Right, you're trying to persuade someone.
Right, and if you're going about it smarter than your peer, there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about making sure that you get the information to make those decisions in a well-justified way.
So now who are the academics that are kind of on the Mount Rushmore of neuroscience?
So that's kind of back to my point where I can't really talk too much about it yet just because of conversations we're having, but you could look at institutions like Emory, you could look at institutions like Georgia Tech or Kennesaw State here in town. You could also
doing interesting work in that space.
Very interesting, yes. You could also look at Columbia University as another group that's done some interesting work in this space.
An author I read a lot is, I think his name's Cialdini, who's done work in persuasion. Is that kind of behavioral science? Is that a splinter of neuroscience, or is that not related?
Behavioral science, thinking like behavioral economics.
Right.
It's a really interesting area that we aren't exploring right now. We understand that it's going to have a lot of implications in our recommendation systems, and so it's something that we are looking into going forward.
So you're focusing primarily on the actual neuroscience that are people studying the brain.
Yeah, particularly
not behaviors necessarily.
Cognitive social science and neuroscience have been our two main focuses from an algorithmic understanding as well as from a neuro understanding.
Mm-hmm. So what do you need more of right now?
Right now, it's more demand. I think that you can't ever
need more people doing this beta.
You can never get enough. I think if we get more people excited about this idea of actually speaking to people the way they want to be spoken to, it helps us accelerate our processes internally.
Now, what about funding? Are you good funding-wise? Are you looking for more funding?
For the moment, we're okay. But that's something that I talk about stoking demand. That gets into the conversation about later this year.
Mm-hmm. And then how has your experience been with ATDC?
I love it. I had known Jackie Chu for a while. And so when we reconnected, when I was starting Sorter, she was like, why aren't you in ATDC? And I was like, I don't know. Why am I not in ATDC?
Were you somewhere else?
So we office out of Atlanta Tech Village, which is a great place to be. But I've loved being involved in the ATDC community.
Well, you're now getting the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
So now, so you have a mentor here. Like, what's your relationship? Where are you at now? What stage are you at ATDC?
Yeah, we're an Accelerate company here. Mm-hmm. So we've got a really close relationship with Michael Sangbush as well as Jackie Chu. Michael's also doing a great marketing technology startup, and so he's been an awesome mentor to us.
And then what's your favorite part of the kind of this ecosystem here? Is it the mentors, or is it the kind of the accidental meetings with people that might be like-minded or philosophically aligned?
There's a few things. I think the connection to Georgia Tech is amazing. I think the education programs are really well thought out. And I think the openness to get together and talk about our ideas is it's really good. I think it's a good thing for the city of Atlanta, and I think it's a good thing for the startup community in general.
So if somebody wanted to learn more, have a more substantive conversation with you, or learn more about Sorter, what's the coordinates?
Yeah, so they can always look at our website, or they can go to our Instagram. So we've turned our Instagram into sort of an introductory slide deck to what we're trying to build at Sorter and where we are now. So you can go to @SorterLabs on Instagram, and you can learn more about us.
Good stuff.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right. Well, keep up the good work, man, and check back in with us when we come back out, yeah?
Yeah, thank you.
No, it's a very exciting time for you, and we look forward to following your story.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys having me on today.
Absolutely, our pleasure. Hey, stay with us. We're going to visit with a couple more folks.
Okay.
All right, Lee, please join me in welcoming next up on ATDC Radio today, CEO with Haste, Miss Lynn Perry. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what'd you learn in that last segment?
I learned that we need to be a customer, and we need to talk after this, Jason.
There you go.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we get 5% on top of all deals in the room. You know that, right?
No problem.
They didn't mention
fair.
that. All right, Lynn, tell us about Haste. How you serving folks?
Sure. So Haste optimizes the internet for real-time experiences. Today we're focused on gaming. So if anybody in the room or your kids or somebody you know loves to play Fortnite, League of Legends, PUBG, any of these cloud games, Haste optimizes the internet connection for that. So lag, jitter, so fluctuation in the experience of lag in the gaming, and packet loss, experiences where packets drop, all are inherent in some of these cloud gaming experiences. Anytime you have somebody, you're shooting, you're dodging a blow, something like that. While the games are extremely beautiful and technical, they're subject to the best effort routing of the public internet, and Haste solves for that.
And then you're solving for me individually at my home or wherever I'm playing the game?
That's right.
And then, so what does it require of me to use Haste?
So for you need to today we support PC gaming. So you would go to our website, haste.net. You would download, you would sign up for the trial. You download a client, so it's a small Windows application that sits on your PC. And once you log in, you don't have to do anything else with Haste, which is one of the differentiators. But you log in, close it, and it's running in the background. And then you play the games that you play, the games that we support. Today we support 25 of the most popular games. So you might open up, Apex Legends, start playing the game, and Haste will sort of pop up in the bottom right-hand corner and say, hey, we recognize you're playing this game. And then we take it from there, and a bunch of technical magic happens. But that's all you have to do.
So you're in the bottom corner, and I just ignore you.
You ignore
You're doing your work without me having to do anything else. That's
absolutely right. You don't have to tell us which game you're playing. You don't have to choose your server, do anything like that. Haste is intelligent. So essentially what we're doing, even when you're not playing, is we're installed on hundreds of thousands of machines all over the world. So we support North America, Northern Latin America, Europe, Middle East, and we have customers even beyond these places that we name that we support. And we're constantly looking at the latency and the quality of connection between all of the nodes, all of those PCs in our network, and how the latency between them and all of the other points of presence on our network. And so we're able to know, when you spin up Apex Legends in this example, okay, you're where you are at your IP address, and we're going to then take over that traffic and only that traffic and multipath it across our network to the game server, reassemble those packets from all of the paths together, send it to the game server, and then do the whole thing, do the same thing on the way back, so that you have a better gaming experience.
And then how noticeable is it for me?
Yeah.
Is it like dramatic, where it's like, oh, where have you been all my life? Or is it like kind of a little bit?
Absolutely. It depends on it depends on where you are and where you're playing a game, and maybe some of your sensitivity to these things. So certainly, more frequent avid players, esports enthusiasts, pro type gamers are even more sensitive. But yeah, absolutely, you can feel the difference, not only in the latency, but especially in that jitter, which is the fluctuation in the latency of the game, which is critical, because even if you think, even if you have a pretty low ping, as it's called, if you have a pretty low ping, but that keeps changing, it becomes difficult to play reliably in the game. So
now, does it matter if, like, say I'm playing in my house, and say my kid's playing, and my wife's streaming Netflix, and I'm doing other things, and there's a lot of internet usage going on at that time. Are you able to help in that area?
Yeah, we particularly, if you're on Wi-Fi, that's going to be generally considered not ideal to play on Wi-Fi, because we look at breaking up those legs and where can haste make an impact.
Right.
So as soon as we can take over that traffic, we make a big difference. But if there's something happening
that's competing with that, then that causes problems.
Yeah, prior to jumping on the network, it's possible that something else, if you're on Wi-Fi, is going to create congestion before haste is able to take over your traffic.
But most gaming happens not on Wi-Fi.
It varies. Yeah.
And you do best when it's not on Wi-Fi, or it doesn't matter?
You'll see the total quality. We still provide the same level of lift, but if you're on Wi-Fi, there's a risk that in that first leg from the device to the home router, the performance is poor, so it may be harder to detect the lift. Mm-hmm.
So you part of your service, though, is to recommend best practices for the individual to get the fastest speeds? Yeah,
absolutely. We have, we include content like that in our nurtures and on our website, and try to, remind people in social without becoming stale. But gamers are also, they're often very savvy, and if they found haste, they're competitive gamers. They want the best experience, and lots of information out there. But gaming is taking up more of folks' time for entertainment, more share of wallet. So they're more serious about a better experience.
So now, share a little bit about the size of the market. Is this how many gamers are out there, and how many gamers are the ones that are kind of these heavy users?
Sure. The size of the market, there's a sort of widely quoted number of about $128 billion spent globally on gaming, I think by 2020. So it's huge. Now that's going to include, everything from esports sponsorships and things like that, all the way down to money spent on console gaming or perhaps consoles. But there are, I think it's, so gamers are predominantly older than we might have thought before, when you might picture the teenager in the basement kind of thing. So an average in the low 30s, more female than maybe previously thought. So I think it's about 40% of gamers, particularly PC gamers, and game time spent on PC gaming is female, played by females. And then it's about 50% of households have a serious gamer in the household in the U.S.
And then what's the kind of line between the casual and the serious?
You could draw the line by hours spent gaming. You could draw the line by, Twitch streaming. Are they not only playing, but are they educating themselves? Are they, watching other people play games? it really varies. But for us, we're focused beyond the quote unquote serious gamer who might be playing 10 plus hours a week to gamers that just flat out want a great experience. And it's particularly important as you see the popularity of games like Apex Legends, like PUBG, like Fortnite, that are these battle royale style games where you've got shooting and dodging and moving of 100 people or so coming in to fight to the death, it's competitive.
Now, how did you get into this line of work?
Sure. So I joined Haste in May of 2018, so just about a year ago. Haste graduated from TechStars a little over 3 years ago. So I took over from the original CEO. He's actually still with us. He was the co-founder along with one of our engineers who's here in the Atlanta office. That CEO lives in Baltimore, and so traveling week to week here wasn't going to be a reality to continue to do. So he's able to stay on and focus on alliances and some strategy things where I can be in the office on a regular basis. And I'd worked for a couple of our investors at a couple other startups within Atlanta. And I'm a first-time CEO, so first time running a business like this. But I think it worked out, pretty well because I've worn lots of different hats and, both startups and large business. And here it's a nice place for it all to come together.
Is your background technical or more sales and marketing?
Is it typically sales and marketing titles in technical space? So I worked in cloud computing, typically B2B, a lot of channel, which has become important for Haste. We're a consumer product today, but so all of our revenue comes from consumers that are signing up directly with Haste. But we have made our product channel ready, and we've signed a partnership with the Ericsson Edge Gravity team. So we have a formal partnership with Ericsson, where together we are powering a gaming tier of service for internet service providers. So that's the background in sort of the B2B and channel world has been, really helpful for that.
So now how do you go about building a partnership like that? Because that's kind of a unique way to approach the market. Yep,
sure. So we, Ericsson started this network they call UDN. Now it's a wholly owned subsidiary called Edge Gravity, the UDN network. And we were introduced actually before I joined Haste. I think it was actually through the ATDC that the former CEO met the guy that was building this business within Ericsson. And they are an edge compute network that matches up really well with Haste from a technical perspective because our network, our points of presence all over the world, or at least the areas that we support, that essentially relay this traffic, rewiring the internet, bypassing BGP protocol, and creating our own fast pathways. So anyway, partnering with Ericsson, who have built this low latency global backbone connected by points of presence all over the world, was a great match. So came together that way, and they were looking for partnerships to bring onto their network to offer to their internet service provider customers, other opportunities for over-the-top revenue to offer to their customers, to their subscribers.
And did ATDC help facilitate that relationship, or they just met randomly?
I think they just met randomly. This was probably about 3 months before my time, so it was an early, I think it was a meetup here, but yeah, it was early. But we over the second half of last year built up the partnership, what the agreements would look like, and then started speaking with service providers in North America, Europe, some in Latin America, about gaming and their strategies in the space.
So now, what do you like most about the ATDC relationship that you guys have?
It's fantastic. I didn't, coming in, I didn't anticipate the level of support. I was thinking about Haste and, my next career move and who's working there and all that stuff. But coming in and working with guys like Frank and John, who, Frank T. and John Avery, who lead the group here, great mentorship, supportive environment. There's a guy that if you're here, Aubrey, he keeps us all smiling. And then there's some other great resources around our EIRs, but especially it's been nice for me, especially as a first-time CEO, just, spending time with the other CEOs here and other business leaders to, share stories.
Informal manner where you can just kind of pop in and ask someone a question.
Absolutely. And everybody's here to help each other out. It's a beautiful space. And it's just a really nurturing environment to be in a startup. A couple other startups I've done were fantastic, but it wasn't quite the level of the office space in those early days, and where you could feel like you could walk down the hall and just grab a coffee with someone or get really useful advice and talk with other leaders. So it's fantastic.
What about a talent pipeline?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, we are, particularly the ability to tap into the Georgia Tech network of interns, and we haven't actually brought one on yet, but we're going to be participating in some fairs that they have coming up. But yeah, I mean, it's abundant. There's really. Sometimes it's hard to think of things to feedback to give John Avery, who's always asking for feedback on, how they can make this more and more valuable. And it's the perfect place as an entrepreneur and a group of entrepreneurs to be.
Now, you were in technology. Were you in gaming before? Were you a gamer?
I was not in gaming. I was not a gamer, and I do my best today. But so I when I came in, I work with. It's everybody's an engineer, everybody's a gamer, except for me. I mean, I can get by technically, but my last experience with gaming, I think, was Duck Hunt or Super Mario Brothers or something. So I would, they all play games at the end of our sprints every other Friday as like a Friday happy hour thing, and I mostly just watch YouTube videos for noobs, as I'm called in the space. So I have my homework to do, but I can hang a little bit. So,
does that give you kind of fresh eyes into the space, and you see things maybe they don't see because they're so immersed in it?
I think that's been really helpful, absolutely. And one of the hats I wear is, a product leader, and so it is important to contribute to the roadmap and lead that in a way that has maybe a bigger business sense beyond. Just what the experience might be for gamers, or I can help them think in ways that will help us understand how do we build features and enable the product to maximize the experience for more and more gamers. So yeah, it's been absolutely helpful. And
then, but is it a challenge that since your product is more for the hardcore super users, that's not you, that it's hard to kind of have empathy and to learn and understand really what they're kind of trying to get out of it, or what could most benefit them?
Not at this point. I mean, our product helps the average gamer. It absolutely does. Our product helps the average gamer, and I've been able to spend time. We have pretty deep analytics on the lift that Haste provides for every single gamer, their jitter, their packet loss, their latency, all over the world, every single session. So I spend so much time with our engineers in that data, optimizing the product that we've created. That it is true that I don't. I don't wake up in the morning thinking, I didn't before I came to Haste, thinking about how to solve for a better gaming experience. But who hasn't had a crappy experience online, whether it's, something buffering,
exactly,
voice over IP, all of that. And really that's what we're solving. Today it's gaming. Gaming is natural, huge space.
So you can fix video conferencing?
Yes. It's not our space today, but no, it absolutely, the Haste, the patent. So we have a couple patents in process, but the patent that's already been approved and for us is not gaming specific. It has to do with our networking and endpoint handling and all of that. So it's the vision is beyond gaming.
Is well beyond gaming, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of needs.
Oh, absolutely. The technology, our opportunity and our technology go well beyond gaming. Hey, we're an ATDC signature startup, or maybe a couple steps past startup phase, depending on how you look at it. But that's part of what we work on, is having the vision for the future, but at the same time executing right now with the resources that we have.
And what do you need more of?
I need more of. I think we're right about to hit an accelerator on things like marketing. Right now, we do zero marketing. We have one person who sort of half the time does some marketing, and I have a marketing background, but I can't spend enough time on it. We don't have a dedicated sales, and so some of the other structure, we've been so heavily focused on engineers, and we'll continue to add to our engineering team. But I think that over the last few years, we've refined the way that we measure how system works and optimize where our points of presence are and how we gather all of this data, that at this point, what I need more of is it's hiring, and that's what we're in the process of doing.
And now investing in some marketing and sales.
Yeah, light. I mean, we will not do. We'll do a little bit of influencer stuff, and we've done some influencer marketing before, but we're really focused on enabling the channel that I mentioned, the Ericsson channel, and then also providing more information on our data. So we have, for me, interesting insights on the performance of service providers for games. So, who's your internet provider? And even though you may have the best package that they offer, they're only able to optimize your traffic within their footprint. And there's peering set up, but essentially it's a best effort to get your packets all the way from your home to a game server, which is likely not on your network and back. So there's some, beyond gaming, just the networking information that comes out of that is really rich. And I think we have so much information. The next step for us, content-wise, is to reflect that back out into interesting views and share that.
Well, if somebody wanted to learn more, have more substantive conversation, what's the best way to find you guys?
Haste.net is our website. I'm Lynn at haste.net, or come by the ATDC.
Well, Lynn, thanks so much for sharing your story, and we look forward to keeping up with it. And I personally look forward to you applying your magic to me doing interviews over the phone. So if that ever comes to pass.
We'll put that on the roadmap.
Put that on the short list for us, will you? Hey, stay with us. We got one more guest we're going to visit with. Yeah? Lee, I think we owe guest number 3 an apology. I'm sorry that you have to follow these two. They both did a fantastic job. Very inspiring, intriguing stories. But you know what? I have faith in you, man. I think you're gonna bring it home for us. Please join me in welcoming to the broadcast co-founder with yardz with a Z, Mr. Jason Perez. How you doing, man?
Very well. Well, first, I just want to thank you guys for allowing us to be a guest on your show. And I say us because Yardz is a family, and our users and customers are all part of us, So we appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you saying that. And tell us about Yardz. What are you guys doing for folks?
Yeah, so we're solving an industry problem, right? A very widespread problem within the construction industry when it comes to equipment rental. So the current process is antiquated, and the best way to kind of relate it is if you went back 30 years, back when you would travel across country or you went on a business trip, you would get on a phone book and you would figure out who you were going to call for a hotel room or a car rental or whatever it was, and you would just have to write them down and figure out where you're going to get the best price, where you're going to stay, what you're going to rent, right? Oddly enough, the construction industry has not solved the problem of renting equipment until Yardz came along, right? So the way that people rent equipment right now, if they wanted to compare rates, they would call their sales guy and hopefully they get a hold of them. Maybe they get the voicemail. Or they'll send an email or a text or whatever it might be, and now they have 3 to 5 different sources and what they're trying to pull rates from and figure out, who they're going to book with or whether or not it's even available. So, it's a long, drawn-out process to figure that out. And believe it or not, there's not a solution out there to automate or to facilitate that process. So we came along and we launched and we said, how do we figure out how to solve that problem and really make it relevant to the users. And so our system is a turnkey system, and it's a rental management software. We've kind of coined that term in the industry. And our users go on, they set up their account, they can load their salespeople because relationships are still important in the construction industry. They don't want to necessarily get drawn out to other people and other places and other companies. They want to deal with the people they normally deal with. So they load it up. They're able to pull out, put quote requests in there. We aggregate the information for them. They see side-by-side comparisons, and they book it, track it to their projects, get alerts to make sure they're not leaving it on site, and they're seeing 20 to 30% savings on the front end, and then savings on the tail end because it's not just sitting racking up the cost,
the fees.
Absolutely.
So now, when you say construction, what does that mean? Is construction a home builder that's building one home, or these commercial builders that are building subdivisions or
right.
Office buildings? Like, what does construction mean to you guys?
Right. So the companies that typically rent the most amount of equipment are either site utility type contractors, or they're trades contractors, subcontractors that you would see out there, right? So electrical, mechanical,
Could it
plumbing.
be the landscaping person that needs a piece of equipment?
Absolutely. There are plenty.
Clear a backyard.
Yes, they can get on. So, when we initially launched, we were more of just a quoting process, right? And so this quoting process, it was transactional, and people would go on, they would just do the quote, they would get these results. And it really fit into the niche of the smaller type customers. But What we found very quickly is relationships are such a driving factor that anybody that rented more than 2 pieces of equipment a month, so these are larger guys, they're typically not one-off, contractors, that our software really fulfilled their needs in providing time savings and monetary savings, right? So these contractors, although they might rent one piece of equipment now and then, the reality is most of our users are renting regularly. And at minimum, what we've seen is, 2 pieces of equipment a month is that threshold where they go, okay, this makes sense. I can't track anything more than 2 pieces of equipment. And believe it or not, it sounds like not a lot,
right?
But people are forgetting.
Is it always the same piece, like typically? Like, are they always like, I always need this kind of a piece of equipment? Or is it like, this month I need this, and then next month I need something else?
Yeah, so we have a full array. You can essentially rent anything through our system. We even have a slot, where you go to do the quote request and you can mark other, right? And you can rent anything from shoring boxes, which isn't equipment, right? Shoring boxes are just these metal plates that you put in the ground to make sure that dirt doesn't fall on people. And contractors will typically rent the same thing, like you're saying, over and over again. But some contractors rent these things, throughout an array, and it might not even be equipment. So they might have suppliers for what we call the aerial lifts. They could be reach lifts, they can be man lifts. The ones that look like accordions that scissor up, or a boom that goes out. But they also might be renting a reach forklift, right? And then they might have storage containers. They might have porta potties. They might have dumpsters. And so through our system, typically they would have to either write these things down on a whiteboard, create their own spreadsheet.
But don't they have like a dumpster guy?
They do. So they'll have 2 or 3 dumpster guys. They might have 2 or 3 porta potty guys. They might have 2 or 3 equipment guys. So now you have 3 different suppliers and maybe 3 or 9 different platforms that you're trying to track all this information on. And ours kind of works like a CRM if you think about it, right? So you're loading who your suppliers are. You're getting all that information for all the equipment. So if you were to draw, 3 little circles that overlap, everybody loves these infographic type things. You would have, projects and points of contact in one. You would have all your suppliers in another, and then you would have all the equipment. And what we do is kind of just overlap that and put it all in one place, organize it for them. They can, track costs. They can see, when that equipment's coming up. They get email alerts. They can call it off. They can do maintenance calls. These are all things that they would traditionally have to pick up a phone, and they would have to track a PO, or they would have to track a contract, call their office, go, hey, where's this at? Where did we rent this piece of equipment at? And the thing is, when you go to a project, you're not going to have just one supplier providing all that equipment.
Right. It'll be different people coming and going.
That's right. And you're going to get different rates, right? So you
Do
might
the
have
rates fluctuate? Are those kind of rates for that type of equipment or any of this type of construction equipment? Is it fluid? Like, look, if you need a lift, maybe somebody that cuts trees needs lifts to help to cut down big trees, and storm just went by. There's only so many lifts in the market. The price of lifts might go up.
Oh, we see that quite a bit. There was the big storm that came through Florida Panhandle and South Georgia, and you cannot find a reach lift. And so one of our customers, who absolutely just calls us on a weekly basis saying how much they love using it, they went down and they said, hey, we're going in the Panhandle. We have a couple projects, and we know it's going to be impossible to find a lift. And so what they did in this case is there's an on and off switch for their suppliers. So if they're going to a new place, and they go, well, we don't know who we're going to be able to rent with, they can switch that off, run a quote, and we'll find that piece of equipment for them, right? So we actually had to go out to 16 different 16 different rental companies to find that piece of equipment for them down in that area. It would have taken them 8 hours of their day, the whole entire day, to figure out how to get that piece of equipment. It took them 15 seconds of putting it in our system, and a couple hours, later, we found it.
Because you're making the calls for them.
Yeah, our system's facilitating. We have points of contact loaded in our system that go out. And so, it's facilitating all that for them, and it's finding it for them so that they don't have to do it themselves.
Now, is it primarily in this region, or do you have kind of the whole country? Like, what's your footprint right now?
Yeah, so our proof of concept and where we started essentially with our MVP was here in Atlanta. Atlanta, most people know this, some don't, is top 10 in equipment rentals in the whole U.S., right?
Really? There's that much construction going on?
That much. I mean, and
what other markets have a lot of construction? That's good intel.
Yeah. So LA's one of them. Seattle's another.
What about Nashville?
Dallas is another one.
Seemed like a lot of cranes in Nashville.
So the last figures we have was off of, I think it was 2016, 2017. Nashville wasn't on that list, but they are probably creeping pretty close to it, I would think. The Southeast in general. My background's construction. I've been in the construction industry since I was a kid crawling attics for my dad. He was an electrician, and now he works for, I think, number 3 contractor in the whole U.S., and so we're kind of a construction family. And our co-founder actually is from the equipment rental industry. He was outside sales rep for 3 of the top 10 rental companies. And so we brought in, construction and equipment rental and married it together and said, what's the most practical solution we can give our users? What would create value, right? So the cool thing about our software, even though we launched here in Atlanta, in the Georgia area, we've done rentals in North Carolina and down in Florida and things like that. The reality is next month we'll be doing a kind of a big go-to-market push and marketing campaign. And part of that, the cool thing in our software is that it's very scalable to anywhere because you're loading, like a CRM, your suppliers, those people that you have relationships with. And our system just facilitates the process. So it doesn't matter, if we can instantly make it convert, translate to any language in the world, essentially people can use it anywhere in the world because you're putting in the data. We're not restricted by the supply chain. That supply chain is created by our users, and so that's what's really cool and relevant to yardz. It's very personalized, and it's very intuitive and easy for our users to kind of just take, plug and play, and start to see the savings instantly.
So now, when a supplier's in the system, are there ways that the supplier can get kind of a more enhanced listing to kind of show off their wares a little bit better and maybe persuade people to choose them over a different supplier?
So I'm seeing a trend in all of our questions. You're always kind of hitting roadmaps, in the future of what we haven't done yet, but we're going to get to. So yes, the future of our system provides just as much benefit to the supplier, and the rental companies as it does to the renters, the contractors, right? And so we are getting to the point, hopefully by the end of this year, we'll be providing some analytics back to our suppliers. They'll have their own custom logins, and they'll start to see trends of where they're coming in and pricing and so forth. Because here's the reality. You talked about pricing when it comes to, if there's a disaster, if there's shortages or, even seasonal, the pricing changes. But here's the crazy thing. Neither my co-founder or I would ever have thought. With all the quotes we've done, we're seeing a span between the lowest price and the highest price for the same piece of equipment, same amount of time, about a 30% difference, right? That's huge. When we're talking that people rent, up to 15, 20, 100 million a year, that's a big difference, right? The crazier thing is that if you take the two lowest prices and you look at those, there's typically a span of 5 to 7.5%. The two lowest, I mean, that's how what the deviations are in the pricing for equipment. So nothing's really standardized in the market, and each one, each company might price a piece of equipment very differently.
And even though it might be the same exact piece of equipment.
Same exact piece of equipment. It can be the same make and model.
Right.
Right.
But it's like anything else. I mean, you can shop at different places and pay more for the same thing.
That's right. And the people that decide to not shop are the ones that consistently pay the most, right? And so our recommendation is, look, relationships are really important. That's why we allow you to put your suppliers in there. But it's also probably smart for you to at least have one other, in there. And most at this time, availability is such an issue that they really do need 2 or 3, because even the big guys are running out of equipment.
Right. Now, what about, how does the service component fit into it? I mean, the equipment is the equipment, and I understand that the price for that can fluctuate, but maybe the one at the highest price has better customer service. Maybe they stand by it better. If something breaks, that they come and send a part, or they replace it, or maybe that warrants some of the higher pricing.
Absolutely. So they have, what we like to say is we're empowering our renters and we're giving them their control back, right? Mm-hmm. And so they see that pricing, they see who that pricing is coming from, and they can make that choice. If they want to pick the highest price guy every time, then they get to do that, but they understand at what cost, right? And what they can't do right now is really understand what that cost is. What is that service cost worth? Is it worth 30%? Great. Then make that choice, right? We're not dictating who they choose. We're just giving them
transparency in the pricing.
That's exactly right. We say freedom of choice through transparency. That's what we tell them.
Now, you mentioned one kind of success story. Do you have any other kind of success stories you can share?
Yeah. So when we first started, as any startup, you're going, okay, some people call it the logo page, or whatever you want to call it, right? You're trying to get people on, and some of them are flagship clients. And we had one that was really big, does a lot of big work here in Georgia. And we kind of sat down, we did our demo, and we were giving a couple people, hey, 30-day free trial type stuff. And on this one, I don't know, I must have just been really happy that morning, and I said, hey, we'll just give it to you for 6 months for free. And after I walked out, I said, what did I do? I mean, this is crazy. Well, they get on, they load all their own equipment, because on our software you can also load your own equipment, and then they start performing some rentals, and they also loaded the rental equipment. And so he sends us an email 3 weeks after signing up and says, hey, I just feel rotten. I mean, I'm using this software for free. Clearly, it costs you guys money. You're going out marketing, doing all this. We just want to pay for the year, because I saved $20,000 in my first month of calling off equipment that we didn't even know that was out there. And this contractor has equipment that costs, $12,000 a month. He has equipment out there that if it sits forgotten, it's big dollars.
Right.
Our software costs him $99 a month. And he's like, I mean, the cost benefit analysis, it doesn't take a genius, right? This isn't for us neuroscience, although we believe we're giving people
just make it blue. That's what I learned.
Well, that's one of our colors, and we actually we're told to make it blue.
Now I'm rethinking the red X that I got.
Really? Well, we got a hint of red in our colors. We're red, white, and blue, and I think we come from blue collar families, and we're resonating with blue collar workers, and that's the reality. We're solving. It's not this fancy how can I put it? I don't want to say. I guess we're not building the flying car and the next thing that right. It's just a really practical solution that's providing value on day one, and our users are going, wow, like what did I do with my life before this? I mean, one of our guys said, I've been trying to get our software guys to build this for the last 4 years, and they just haven't done anything that's meaningful, right? We've had some quoting pieces, we've had this, but they just have not built what we've needed. And he said, I've been in the industry for 30 years. And so what we're seeing also is that from a demographic standpoint, it's not, hey, just the young people that are using Airbnb and Expedia and all these booking type things. Oh, well, I book other things online, so now I can use this. No, we're seeing guys that are, a couple years away from retirement going, hey, thanks for giving my life back, right? Like,
and those are clipboard guys that aren't tech friendly.
That's exactly right. These are whiteboard guys. We're walking in offices and they have multiple whiteboards with, different color markers, just writing stuff down, and they're trying to track it. And then, they're realizing, just last week we had somebody say, one of our rental companies actually said, hey, can you go visit one of my clients? They left a piece of equipment on a project for 3 months, and they called me and they were furious that they left it on the project for 3 months. It's not my fault they left it there.
Right. I couldn't rent it. It was sitting there.
It was sitting there, right? But the client's thinking, hey, I do a lot of business with you. I shouldn't have to pay for it. So we're solving a problem on both sides where now this client of the rental company is going to use our software to ensure that never happens again. They're going to get alerts. They're going to be able to save money and not have to get in these heated, weird conversations of, I do a lot of business, don't charge me for it.
Right, even though you couldn't rent it and make any money
That's
on it.
That's exactly right.
So now if somebody wanted to learn more, what's the best way to get a hold of you guys?
Absolutely. So they can visit yardz.com. That's YARDZ. That's the important part. Yardz.com, and my email address is jason@yardz.com.
And then ATDC has been good for you guys?
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, I like to give speeches almost every class or any roundtable that I'm part of for ATDC and outside of ATDC, because they saved me. I've been funding the company. They saved me over $200,000 in the first meeting that I ever had with them. We were speaking to all these people, and we defined what we thought was an MVP, and we said, this is it. Right. This is what an MVP is.
We got to figure it out.
This is as stripped down as we can get. And we sat down with Michael Sangbush, and he goes, you guys are nuts. This is not an MVP. Let me help you understand what a real MVP is. And we threw away all the quotes that we had, went back to the drawing board, and even though we walked away with our tail between our legs, we felt like we learned something extremely valuable. And again, I saved a ton of money. We have now positioned ourselves in a much better place, and we've been able to leverage our dollars in a better way as well. So, and Shane Matthews has just been so integral in connecting us to potential funding, to different ideas, to different technology leaders. I mean, both of them, and Bill Hogan's a star when it comes to customer discovery. He will strip you down, and I'm a behavioral scientist academically, and so that's what I went to school for, and there were things that I forgot that he brought back up. And Lior Weinstein is an awesome behavioral scientist and just amazing when it comes to marketing. I mean, the team here is so solid. If anybody's doing a startup, especially around technology, and they're not here at ATDC, they're really making a mistake.
Well, good stuff, Jason. Thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Thank you. Thank you for having.
All right, that's Jason Perez with Yardz, YARDZ.com. Good stuff.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all for being part of the show. This is Lee Cantor for Stone Payton. We will see you all next time on ATDC Radio.